To build a permanent shelter in a birch forest, the first battle is against the damp earth itself. He begins by clearing the topsoil, digging past the loose organic layer to reach stable ground. Setting upright posts establishes a suspended foundation, which keeps the future floor structure isolated from moisture and rot. A raised platform is only as strong as its framing grid. He lays down heavy timber beams, securing them across the vertical posts to distribute the load evenly. A suspended floor allows air to circulate underneath, preventing the timber from drawing dampness directly from the forest floor. The grid structure must be perfectly level and square before any decking is applied. Every crossbeam he hammers into place reinforces the lateral strength of the platform. Wood sitting directly on soil will decay within a few seasons. By elevating the joists, the structure can breathe. Working with raw lumber requires careful alignment. He marks each cut with a red pencil, calculating the exact span between the joists. A traditional handsaw is slower than modern power tools, but it leaves a cleaner end grain that absorbs less moisture over time. Securing the decking boards tightly against one another creates a rigid, unified surface. The sheer volume of wood required for a simple foundation is immense. As the platform takes shape, it transforms an uneven patch of wilderness into a controlled, level workspace. This is the blank canvas for the shelter above. A solid base dictates the integrity of every wall that follows. Vertical wall frames carry the entire weight of the roof system. He constructs the frames directly on the flat platform before raising them into position, a technique that guarantees the corners remain true. The internal wooden supports act as a skeleton, resisting wind pressure from the surrounding forest. A steep, gabled roof design is essential for shedding heavy snow. Its pitched angle ensures that accumulation slides off naturally, preventing structural collapse during deep winter storms. Exterior siding serves as the first line of defense against the elements. Installing the wooden planks horizontally overlaps the seams, forcing rainwater to cascade down the face of the timber rather than seeping into the interior framing. Each horizontal board must be driven tightly against the one below it. Any gaps will invite freezing drafts once the temperature drops. He uses a hammer to force the boards flush, ensuring a tight seal across the exposed studs. This overlapping friction fit adds tremendous rigidity to the entire wall assembly. Preparing the roof rafters demands precision joinery. He cuts a deep notch into the wooden beam using a hand chisel, creating a locking connection known as a bird's mouth joint. This careful cutout allows the angled rafter to sit completely flat on the top wall plate, transferring the downward force directly into the vertical studs. A flat cut would rely entirely on nails or screws, which can easily shear under the immense weight of winter snow. The sharp hand chisel removes the waste wood cleanly, leaving a smooth bearing surface. By custom fitting each rafter on the ground, he ensures the roofline will be perfectly straight. A green tarp acts as a temporary weather barrier, protecting the exposed framing from sudden rain while he finalizes the timber joinery. A wet frame is prone to warping before it can be fully sealed. With a waterproof membrane stretched tight across the peak, the interior is finally dried in. Trimming the overhanging rafter tails in place establishes a clean, uniform eaves line. Roofing shingles, split by hand, follow the natural straight grain of the wood. Using an axe to rive the timber preserves the continuous internal fibers, making the finished shingles highly resistant to water penetration. Modern sawn lumber cuts blindly across these fibers, exposing microscopic tubes that actively wick moisture into the wood. He refines each piece with a hand plane and a sharp carving knife, tapering the top edges so they will lay flat against each other on the roof deck. The overlapping installation creates a breathable but highly waterproof skin. It is a slow, labor-intensive process. But hand-cleft wooden shingles can survive for decades. Their varying width easily accommodate the slight imperfections of a hand-built frame. Custom window frames require heavy-duty structural hardware. Driving the screws flush into the metal hinge plate prevents the mechanism from binding when the sash closes. Precision here ensures the window will seal tightly against winter drafts. Mounting a moving window sash on a raw wooden cabin is a rigorous test of tolerances. He attaches the hinged frame to the exterior wall, constantly checking the swing radius. Timber naturally expands and contracts with seasonal humidity shifts, so the frame must retain just enough clearance to open smoothly without leaving permanent gaps for the wind. He meticulously inspects the alignment from the interior, looking for daylight creeping through the edges. A poorly fitted window will easily compromise the thermal efficiency of the entire form shelter. This outward swinging design saves valuable interior space and presses tighter against its own weather, stripping when strong storm winds blow. Every manual adjustment made on the ladder guarantees a permanent, draft-free fit. It is the barrier between a cold forest and a warm refuge. With the heavy stove roughly positioned inside, attention returns to the exterior finishing. He carves a precise structural groove into a pine beam, creating a channel for complex joinery. Using a sharp chisel and a wooden hand plane, he shaves away the rough, torn fibers. Clean, smoothly planed wood surfaces shed water far more effectively than rough-sawn lumber. They also sit perfectly flush against neighboring boards, which is critical for weather-tight exterior trim. Wiping away the sawdust reveals a flawless, square geometric notch, ready to interlock seamlessly with the cabin's primary framing. True craftsmanship is often hidden in the joints. Window trim serves as far more than a decorative aesthetic border. It functionally covers the highly vulnerable expansion gap between the window frame and the exterior siding. He hammers the wooden trim pieces tightly around the perimeter to seal the envelope. The carefully beveled cuts on the edges of the boards are specifically designed to shed rain away from the glass. Water allowed to pool on flat wooden sills will rapidly accelerate rot. Marking precise cutting lines with a red pencil ensures the joined corners meet without any exposed gaps. He evaluates the fit constantly, adjusting the tension by hand. The completed trim effectively locks the window unit into the wall matrix, acting as a final flashing layer against the harsh, driving winds of the forest environment. It is a simple mechanical barrier that protects the delicate interior. As the season turns and heavy snow begins to fall, sealing the exterior becomes an urgent priority. Hammering the final pieces of trim in freezing temperatures requires a steady, calculated hand. Cold wood can become brittle, making it far more likely to split under the sudden impact of a nail. The newly installed metal chimney pipe protruding from the roof indicates that internal heating is nearly operational. He fastens the bottom sill securely to the wall base. This critical piece prevents expanding ice buildup from wedging itself behind the wooden siding, which could pry the protective planks away from the frame. A solid exterior door must withstand decades of constant use and severe temperature swings. He uses a sharp axe to shave the edge of the wide boards, a traditional and highly effective method for sizing lumber when power planers are not an option. The heavy geometric chevron pattern laid out on the surface is not merely decorative. The angled diagonal bracing fundamentally prevents the wide wooden door from sagging under its own weight over time. A door constructed solely of parallel vertical planks will eventually warp and drop as the hinges endure stress. Sawing and trimming the individual pieces on an outdoor workbench allows him to match the exact dimensions of the cabin's custom hand-built door frame. He uses a taut string line to align the nailing pattern, ensuring structural consistency across the hidden interior battens. Driving the nails deep into the cross-bracing ties the disparate planks into a singular, unified shield. The finished panel is exceptionally heavy, dense, and rigid. It stands as a formidable thermal barrier against the encroaching winter. Working deep into the freezing night under a single hanging light, he continues to refine the door. Smoothing the exterior face with a hand plane removes rough splinters and allows melted snow to bead and run off quickly. The final fitting of a heavy timber door requires exact, unforgiving measurements. Cutting the structural frame components at night demands intense concentration, as shifting shadows can easily distort a pencil line or a saw cut. He carries the massive wooden slab to the illuminated threshold, lifting the dead weight into the opening. The tight, almost restrictive clearance around the perimeter is highly intentional. A snug fit prevents precious radiant heat from escaping around the door edges. Hammering the outer door frame into place permanently secures the load-bearing hinges and establishes the final physical weather seal for the cabin. The intricate geometric face of the finished door glows warmly under the interior light, standing as a stark, crafted contrast to the bitter cold of the snowy birch forest. The shelter is now fully enclosed. true winterization requires multiple independent layers of defense against the cold. He uses a staple gun to attach thick insulation directly around the interior door frame, packing the microscopic air gaps that raw wood trim alone cannot seal. Moving outside into the snow, he mounts a massive chevron-patterned cladding panel to the exterior wall. This robust secondary layer acts as an engineered windbreak, deflecting the harshest freezing gusts away from the vulnerable main entrance. Hammering the heavy wooden shield into place adds tremendous thermal mass to the cabin's front facade. The aggressively angled boards of the chevron pattern shed driving snow highly efficiently, ensuring the threshold remains clear and accessible even during heavy overnight drifts. It is functional armor for the shelter. Heavy-duty black metal hinges provide the sheer tensile strength required to swing the dense timber door. He drives the long screws deep into the solid wood backing of the frame, ensuring the hardware will never pull loose under the extreme leverage of the heavy panel. Working late into the dark, he hammers a wooden stop block to the inner door frame. This small, critical piece abruptly halts the door's momentum, preventing it from swinging too far inward and catastrophically stressing the metal hinges. Trimming the interior doorway elegantly conceals the rough, framing gaps and underlying insulation. Carefully measuring the upper wall dimensions ensures that the final interior paneling sits perfectly plumb, maintaining the integrity of the cabin's tight thermal envelope. A wood stove is the vital, beating heart of any permanent off-grid shelter. Installing the exhaust pipe safely through a wooden wall is a critical priority. Timber, exposed to constant, high radiant heat over time, will aggressively dry out and eventually ignite. He draws a precise circular guide on the interior wall using a pencil and string to map the exact flue opening. Using a yellow spirit level, he ensures the surrounding heat shield support boards are perfectly vertical. The metal pass-through plate fundamentally isolates the blistering hot chimney pipe from the combustible wooden paneling. Once the safe exhaust route is fully secured, he carries the massive cast iron stove into the cabin. Cast iron is the undisputed ideal material for a deeply cold climate. It absorbs thermal energy slowly and continues to radiate intense, comforting heat for many hours long. After the actual fire has died down to embers, the heavy iron mass turns the small room into a thermal battery. Securing the exterior metal stovepipe with steel brackets prevents high winter winds from vibrating the chimney loose. Adjusting the flue cap high on the snowy roof ensures a proper updraft, pulling dangerous smoke efficiently up and safely away from the living space. With the cabin finally heated, the focus shifts to outfitting the interior space. He lays out a massive wooden plank to serve as both a seating bench and a raised sleeping platform. Testing the length personally ensures the dimensions perfectly match the human scale of the small enclosed room. He checks the horizontal plane with a spirit level, as a newly built cabin floor can settle slightly over its first winter. Attaching small metal brackets and custom wooden fixtures directly to the log walls provides robust anchor points. Building the heavy furniture directly into the structural walls saves critical floor space and effectively reinforces the rigidity of the entire cabin. Creating a wide, solid tabletop requires joining multiple individual planks seamlessly together. He applies high-strength wood glue evenly along the raw edges before pressing the heavy boards tight. The liquid adhesive penetrates deep into the porous wood fibers, creating a permanent chemical bond that is often significantly stronger than the surrounding wood itself. Nailing the newly joined top down to a sturdy wooden base securely locks the flat surface in place, while the glue slowly cures in the warm cabin air. To maximize utility in the small space, he drills a heavy metal handle directly into the structural wall studs, providing a sturdy, reliable grip for moving safely around the tight, functional quarters. A heavy, solid wood table requires a massive, unyielding central support. He uses a steel axe to aggressively carve a thick log retrieved straight from the freezing forest. Hewing the round timber creates perfectly flat, stable bearing surfaces for the wide tabletop to rest upon. The swinging axework is powerful but highly precise, rapidly stripping away the soft bark and damp sapwood to expose the dense, dry heartwood beneath. He positions the freshly carved stump inside the cabin, creating a heavy, immovable pedestal that visually and structurally ties the interior furniture back to the raw, wild forest outside. Raw, unfinished wood absorbs accidental spills and stains almost instantly. Rubbing a liquid protective treatment deep into the porous grain permanently seals the surface, ensuring the tabletop can easily withstand. Expanding the footprint to the covered exterior porch, he uses a traditional hand drill to bore deep anchor holes into the floorboards. Manual augers carve out perfectly clean, precise cylindrical cavities without the aggressive, destructive wood tear-out, often caused by high-speed power tools. Out in the deep snow, he saws a long, raw birch pole to an exact, measured length. Birch is an exceptionally dense, resilient hardwood, making it ideal for structural railings or heavy-duty tool handles. Working with freshly felled green birch requires immediate sizing and shaping before the moisture leaves the wood and it hardens to the consistency of iron. Measuring carefully with a tape ensures the custom-cut pole will fit exactly into the freshly drilled wooden sockets on the porch. Using a heavy steel axe to taper a small wooden bench leg is an exercise in highly controlled force. He shapes the end to fit snugly into a round, pre-drilled mortise under the bench seat. The sharp blade effortlessly shaves the green wood down to the exact required diameter. A power drill quickly drives a screw to lock the tapered leg securely into the seat joint. He cuts additional bracing sections on a nearby stump. Running a sharp hand plane over the rough bench seat removes any dangerous splinters, leaving a smooth, polished surface ready for daily seating. For the massive outdoor timber workshop, traditional, heavy-duty joinery takes over. He uses a hatchet to aggressively hollow out a deep rectangular mortise. Driving a wooden peg through the joint locks the heavy beams together permanently, and a handsaw trims it perfectly flush. A custom-carved diagonal wooden brace prevents the towering vertical post from leaning under the crushing weight of the roof. Refining the carved joint with a hand chisel ensures maximum surface contact between the mating timbers, which is crucial for distributing immense shear forces. A manual hand-crank drill bores out the bulk of the waste wood from the mortise cavity, making the final precise chisel work significantly faster. He clears the remaining chips to create a clean, deep square pocket. Fitting the heavy horizontal beam into the vertical post creates a load-bearing skeleton that relies entirely on interlocking geometry rather than metal fasteners. Pounding a split wooden wedge into the seam fiercely tightens the connection. Finally, a hammered wooden peg secures the beam, acting as an unbreakable dowel that prevents the heavy joint from ever pulling apart. Straddling a traditional shaving horse, he pulls a sharp drawknife toward him to peel the bark from a birch log. The wide blade perfectly follows the natural, undulating contours of the wood, exposing the clean, workable timber beneath, without compromising its inherent cylindrical strength. A heavy axe makes quick work of flattening the round top surface of the log. Carving a long, straight groove establishes a deep guide track for the more delicate gouge work to follow. A curved steel gouge acts like a sharp scoop, systematically carving out a deep channel in the flattened log to create a long, functional wooden trough. He uses steady, downward pressure to peel away the resilient wood fibers layer by layer. The finished carved trough features remarkably smooth, uniform interior walls. Transitioning to a flat board, he uses a heavy wooden mallet and a chisel to sink a perfectly circular recess. Striking the chisel handle drives the sharp steel edge cleanly through the dense, resisting grain. Creating these precise, recessed pockets requires immense physical control so the surrounding dry wood doesn't split or fracture under the heavy mallet blows. A traditional marking gauge scribes a perfectly parallel line down the entire length of a square timber beam. This tiny, physically scratched line serves as an absolute boundary for the carving tools, proving far more accurate and permanent than a simple drawn pencil mark. He checks the planed surface for hidden high spots by running his bare hand over the grain, feeling for microscopic bumps the eye might miss. Hammering a wooden dowel deep into the beam creates a solid internal anchor point. He then meticulously carves a continuous deep groove along the scribed guideline, allowing the thin wood shavings to curl away freely from the sharp blade. This long groove is designed to seat a mating wooden panel securely within the beam. Lifting a long board into the shelter structure, he nails it directly to the grooved timber. Inspecting the heavy assembly with a hammer in hand visually confirms that the friction fit groove and the steel nails are working perfectly in tandem to keep the massive outdoor workshop structure completely rigid and true. Marking the rough-hewn timber with a green pencil clearly outlines the exact required dimensions of a mortise. A heavy wooden mallet repeatedly drives the chisel deep into the beam, forcefully chopping out the waste wood. Fitting a carved wooden tenon precisely into this pocket creates a mortise and tenon joint, one of the oldest and strongest load-bearing connections in traditional carpentry. Driving a wooden peg through the side of the joint physically locks the tenon permanently inside the mortise, making it impossible to pull apart even under extreme structural tension. Using a hand-cranked auger to bore upward into a solid roof beam requires significant, sustained upper body strength. The large spiral drill bit aggressively pulls itself into the dense wood, extracting long, continuous curls of timber. He threads a heavy metal eye bolt deep into this newly bored hole, creating a highly secure overhead anchor capable of suspending massive swinging loads within the workshop. A sharp handsaw cuts a small, required spacer block directly from a piece of scrap lumber. Using a small carving knife, he carefully shaves the rough edges, fine-tuning the block's exact dimensions. Aligning this custom-carved spacer against the main timber post ensures the upcoming joint will sit perfectly flush. A metal bracket screwed directly into the vulnerable end grain of a wooden post provides unyielding modern reinforcement. Dropping two small wooden dowels into the top of the post creates perfect vertical alignment pins. When he forces the heavy wooden beam down over the dowels and strikes it hard with a hammer, the hidden pins permanently prevent any lateral twisting or shifting within the massive joint. The sharp drawknife quickly shapes a curved wooden component, producing long, satisfying wood shavings across the bench. He presses a small locking peg deep into a carved wooden block by hand. To secure this specific dynamic joint, he relies entirely on pure friction and tensile strength. Wrapping a length of thick rope tightly around the wooden connection binds the pieces together with immense constricting force. As the natural fiber rope absorbs ambient moisture from the damp forest air, it will actually shrink and tighten even further, locking the raw wooden components into an immovable, permanent bond without a single drop of glue. Operating a traditional foot-powered pole lathe requires a hypnotic rhythm of leg and hand coordination. Pressing the wooden treadle downward pulls a tensioned rope wrapped around the workpiece, spinning the block of wood rapidly toward the sharp steel chisel. As the treadle releases, a springy overhead pole pulls the rope back, instantly resetting the spin. He only applies the cutting edge on the downward power stroke. This ancient, ingenious machine allows him to carve perfectly symmetrical cylinders completely off the grid. Using a curved gouge, he hollows out the spinning interior, carefully removing thin, delicate ribbons of wood. The spinning rotational momentum does the difficult work, leaving a flawlessly smooth concave profile that would take agonizing hours to carve by hand alone. Winter has fully arrived, turning the open-air timber workshop into a freezing environment. He positions a wide wooden board firmly on the workbench, preparing to cut it to its final length. A traditional hand saw cuts steadily and aggressively on the forward push stroke. Cold, freezing wood is significantly denser and harder to saw, requiring much more physical exertion to drive the steel teeth through the hardened, icy grain. As the cold twilight fades, the hand plane smooths the final wooden boards of the day. In the encroaching dark, the sharp, mechanical bite of a drill secures a heavy metal bracket to the wooden frame. Working purely by artificial light narrows a builder's focus entirely down to the tool and the immediate, critical joint at hand. Late into the freezing night, the final finishing touches demand the absolute highest precision. He runs a sharp hand plane along the edge of a large board, beveling the corner slightly. A sharp, 90-degree wooden edge is fragile and highly prone to splintering upon impact. but a cleanly planed bevel naturally deflects damage and feels inherently smooth to the human touch. Carrying the massive board to the brightly lit cabin threshold, he prepares to mount the final closure in the doorframe. Securing a heavy metal hinge with a manual hand drill requires slow, deliberate, and forceful turning to completely avoid stripping the soft wood fibers. The quiet, controlled grinding of the hand drill ensures the steel screw threads bite deeply into the timber, permanently anchoring the heavy swinging door to the solid cabin structure. The final detail provides the daily tactile connection to the shelter. Using an axe, he quickly roughs out a small block of wood before mounting it securely on the pole lathe. The rhythmic foot treadle spins the wood, while a sharp chisel cuts the intricate, sweeping curves of a custom door knob. The lathe instantly transforms a raw, discarded scrap of forest timber into a perfectly round, polished handle. He saws the finished knob free from the block and forcefully hammers it into the heavy cabin door. What began as a damp, empty clearing in the birch forest is now a fully realized off-grid sanctuary. Every single hand-cut joint, planed board, and driven wooden peg represents a direct, honest exchange of labor for survival. In the end, structure, landscape, and daily routine operate as one unified system. A quiet place that produces, protects, and sustains itself long into the deep winter.